Hey guys, so this one may be a three-parter because we're talking about World War II. So we're in Domain 4 still, Standard 19. This is our last standard in Domain 4 though. So we're talking about World War II, what happened, how it changed America, all the stuff. So the first thing we look at is why and how did the US get involved in World War II? So I'm going to give you just a little bit of background. It doesn't really go too much into it, but I just want to make sure that we're all kind of caught up and on the same page. So we've got the major European Axis powers. We've got Germany, Italy, and the Soviet Union, which was what today is like Russia. So basically, they repeatedly violated the Treaty of Versailles. So remember, the Treaty of Versailles is what ended World War One. And remember, we called it the peace built on quicksand because it basically destroyed Germany, and it made a lot of nations really angry, like Italy and the Soviet Union. So they didn't like the Treaty of Versailles. You've got Hitler that comes up to power. We don't even have time to go into all that. And so basically, they start to violate this treaty because they're attempting to strengthen their nations and capture new territories, which the Treaty of Versailles specifically says you can't do. Right? Like, no more capturing of nations by you, Germany. And Germany goes and does it anyways. Right? So they've already been violating the treaty. But basically, a lot of the European nations are like, trying to kind of ignore it. I mean, they're like telling him, no, no, Hitler, don't do that. But they're reluctant to get into war until Germany invades Poland on September 1st of 1939. So that was very, very against the Treaty of Versailles. Like, it was very clear that Germany should not do this. They were very clearly going against what they were being told not to do. And so Britain and France declared war after that. And actually, the Soviet Union as well is going to end up joining the Allies because before they were with the Germans and they signed a pact. And by Germany invading Poland, they went against this pact as well. So the Soviet Union actually ends up being on our side, basically. So the US, again, doesn't want to get involved, right? So we've already gone through World War One. We tried to stay neutral in World War One, but we couldn't because of the unrestricted submarine warfare by the Germans, right? So we're trying to, again, we're saying we're not getting involved. So Congress actually passes a series of neutrality laws. And they say the US can't sell arms, weapons, or make loans to nations at war. So it basically, these neutrality laws are putting it out there in writing. We are staying neutral. We are not getting involved in this one. Too many people remember the events of World War One. We're staying out of it, right? So in 1939, however, the Nazi power is growing stronger over in Europe. Right. And so we start to see that our allies, as well as our own trade, is starting to suffer. So basically, we decide that we can't not do anything anymore. So we pass the Neutrality Act, which basically says that we will permit the sale of any materials to nations at war on a cash and carry basis. So what that means is that if you want goods from us, if you want weapons, if you want aid for the war, whatever, then you have to bring your own ships over here, pay cash for it, and then carry it back. So you have to come get it and you have to pay cash for it. So the idea there is we're still technically neutral, right? We're not declaring sides. We're not getting involved, right? But this will help our allies who really need support at this time. So basically, as things ramp up over in Europe, it gets to a point where Britain and France can't really follow the cash and carry guidelines anymore. They don't have the money, they don't have the resources to get over here to help us, to get the resources that they need. So in March of 1941, Congress passed the Lend-Lease Act. So this would allow the US to help the Allies without actually going to war. Again, we're still technically staying out of it. So it says that we will loan or lease arms, weapons, supplies, whatever, to nations whose defense was vital to the survival of the US, aka our allies, right? The people that we trade with. So again, this is aimed at helping Britain and France. This is aimed at helping our allies that we trade with. So the whole idea here is, okay, we're taking it a step further. We're getting a little bit more involved because now we are going to loan out supplies to the countries that need it, our allies that need it. So slowly but surely getting a little bit more and a little bit more involved, but we have still officially said, no, we're not fighting. We're not sending soldiers. We're not officially declaring sides, even though most of the things we're doing, kind of side with our allies, obviously. But we're staying out of it, is what we said, until Pearl Harbor. So Japan was on the side of the Axis powers, right? And they were taking over all of these nations over here in Asia. So you've got Japan right here, and know that Japan is not a very resource-rich country because think about it, it's really small, it's tiny, right? So they were trying to take over a whole bunch of nations, which again is going against the Treaty of Versailles. It's going against this idea that we're gonna, stop taking over other nations. And so we're angry. And so we eventually say, you know what? We're not going to help you anymore. We're not going to give you any oil to trade with you for you to keep doing this, for you to keep taking over these nations, right? And so we put an oil embargo on them and say, no more, we're not giving you any more oil. So Japan needs that fuel to continue capturing nations. And so they're upset about the fact that we are not going to give them any more fuel, right? And so to kind of counteract that, and to basically, they want to strike first because they kind of see the writing on the wall and see that we're not helping them, we are helping the allies. And so they decide that they're going to launch a surprise attack. So on December 7th of 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, which was the largest naval base in the Pacific. It was in Hawaii. So they wanted to weaken our attempts to prevent their conquest in the Pacific. So if the Japanese thought if we go and attack this massive naval base, then they won't have the force that they need, the resources that they need to stop us from doing what we want to do. Right. So at the attack of Pearl Harbor, we had 18 battleships that were damaged or sunk, over 350 planes destroyed, over 2,400 dead, over 1,178 wounded. And I always tell my classes at this point that you can't fully understand the true horror of this just by looking at these pictures. I don't know, because these pictures are black and white, and you can see the big smoke clouds and the people running away, and you can see the ships sinking and all of those things. But I feel like it just doesn't do a good enough job of really fully capturing what happened. So I know most of my students probably were either very, very little during September 11th, or you weren't even born yet. So you probably don't remember that either, but just think about the US being attacked on our own soil, right? And so I always tell people to go and watch the Pearl Harbor movie. The love triangle is really stupid and whatever, but the attack scene really captures, I feel like, what happened. Really captures kind of the emotion of this naval base being attacked. So anyways, so after that, basically there was no way that we were not declaring war, right? Like there was no way that we weren't going to retaliate after that. So on December 8th, the very next day, Congress declares war on Japan and the US officially enters World War II. And that's how we get into World War II. So again, we'd been already sort of getting involved, even though we were still technically neutral. But then Pearl Harbor happens. And after that, there's just no question we're going to get involved. So I'm going to stop it there and we will go to part 2.